When I died at the age of 33, I died with a lifetime of secrets and shame that went with me. Things that I had never told anybody, especially the abuse that I endured as a child from the ages of 3 to 12. I fell straight to my knees and then went straight to my face. And I cried because he touched me, knowing who I was and who I had been. And he wrapped this love around me. And I put my hands up and I said, why?
In part 1 of 2 of Crystal McVea's near-death experience, the American school teacher shares how she died at age 33 and met God, who answered her lifelong question about why he allowed her childhood abuse. Crystal grew up in a small town in southwest Oklahoma, USA, where church attendance was a given. At 8 years old, she responded to an altar call, ready to be saved. What no one knew was that Crystal had been suffering abuse since age 3, and it was still continuing. She was baptized that night, hoping Lord Jesus would save her from the abuse. When it didn't stop, she was baptized again and again, 4 times in 3 different denominations by age 12. Finally, Crystal concluded that either God wasn't real or he was real and simply didn't love her. By age 12, after repeated baptisms she hoped would somehow stop the abuse, Crystal felt worthless. Pregnant at 17, she carried shame into adulthood until she came to believe that if God was real, he would never love someone like her. She married and divorced young, and by 23 had 2 children and a failing belief in God. When pastors spoke of God as a loving father, it didn't compute. Her own father was absent, and her stepfather struggled with drug and alcohol abuse. At 28, Crystal married Virgil, the first Christian man she had ever dated, and her relationship with God began to shift. 5 years later, they welcomed twins, Willow and Micah, born 4 months premature. Crystal wrestled with God throughout their hospital stay, not knowing if her babies would survive. She tested God repeatedly, asking for specific signs, twins, a boy and a girl, and even different eye colors. Every prayer was answered, yet Crystal still allowed herself to believe it was coincidental. 6 months after bringing the twins home, Crystal went in for a routine endoscopy to check for breathing issues. The procedure went wrong and she developed acute pancreatitis. 2 days into her hospital stay, she called her mother, saying she was dying. Hours later, Crystal went into respiratory arrest. Her heart stopped beating, her breathing stopped, and a code blue, the hospital's emergency call for cardiac or respiratory arrest, was issued as doctors rushed to resuscitate her.
I remember opening my eyes and seeing my mom sit at the foot of my bed, and her back was towards me and she was reading a magazine. And I remember instantly knowing that my heart had just stopped, and I remember knowing I wasn't breathing. And I have been terrified of death my entire life. And instantly this peace overwhelmed me, comforted me, and there was no fear. And with the last little breath I had in my lungs, I said, I love you, to my mom. And then I closed my eyes and instantly opened them and was standing in heaven. For me, everything happened simultaneously, but on earth, we have to tell things in a sequence. All knowledge was downloaded instantly. I knew where I was. I knew who I was, which I say I was still Crystal. I was still the same Crystal that had just died in that hospital room that the doctors and nurses were performing CPR on to bring back. And yet I was the most perfect version of myself standing in this light. No negativity whatsoever was attached to me. I remember all of the knowledge being flooded. I remember knowing that I was the same me that had existed. I say, I was the same me that existed for all of eternity. And when I came across the verse that said, for I've known you before I knitted you in your mother's womb. Yeah, that is the me that was standing there. The me that he had created before I became the human form of myself. My spirit is what was standing in front of him.
Crystal experienced time differently. There was no rush, as if time didn't exist. She had access to all knowledge instantly and knew everything she needed to know. She was in a tunnel made entirely of gorgeous light, not darkness, but a light that communicated and could be felt. Two angels stood in front of her to the left. They appeared human-like in silhouette, but light radiated off them like a light bulb you can't see into because of the brightness.
This light source that was running through me and around me and radiating off of the floors of this tunnel and radiating off of the angels was his source. It was God himself. I knew that I had known them not on this life, not on this earth. I knew that I had known them for as long as I had been in existence. They were excited that I could finally see them and hear them. And I just remember loving them so much. Like they have to be my very best friends, like to love me and know me better than anybody on this earth does.
Crystal communicated with the angels, not through words, but through feelings and thoughts. She described having 100 senses instead of the 5 we experience on earth. Then she became aware of a presence to her right, which had been there all along.
I turned to face this presence, and immediately my spirit recognized him. I say, I didn't meet God. I recognized him. I was standing in front of the entity that created me. Mm-hmm. I mean, can you imagine? But I saw him, and I fell straight to my knees. And I remember this is pivotal to me because I raised my hands. Now, I had been raised mostly Baptist and Methodist, and we didn't raise our hands in church. I had never praised like that. And I remember falling to my knees and putting my hands up, and then I couldn't even stay on my knees. I went straight down to my face. And it was out of a reverence. It was out of a love. And instantly, as I went down in front of him, I remember I just started crying, and he wrapped me in this tangible light, this tangible love that I could feel.
Crystal had gone her whole life planning to ask God why he allowed her abuse. But when she opened her mouth in his presence, something unexpected came out.
And as I raised my hands and I opened my mouth, I said, "Why didn't I do more for you?" And I'm so glad that God allowed me to remember that, because in that moment, with all that knowledge flooded into my spirit, the only question I had for him was one of regret. Why didn't I do more for you?
God wrapped her in love like a cocoon, and she reached out trying to get closer, even though he was all around her.
I said, "I could worship you for all of eternity." Now, that is not something that Crystal would have ever said, because 4 songs in church and I was kind of done. And here I was saying, "I could lay and worship you for all of eternity."
But Crystal's encounter was far from over. God would soon reveal something she had never understood about her entire life.
He said, "I have tried to tell you this your entire life. I have tried to show you your entire life."
Previously, in part 1 of 2 of Crystal McVea's near-death experience, Crystal described dying at age 33 and finding herself in the presence of God. Overwhelmed by his love, she expected to ask why he allowed her childhood abuse, but instead, the only words that came out were filled with regret. "Why didn't I do more for you?" Today, in part 2 of 2, Crystal continues her journey with God as he leads her toward the entrance of heaven. God told her that once they got there, she couldn't come back. He showed her all 4 of her children, ages 13, 11, and the 10-month-old twins.
He showed me that the plan for their life, all of their lives, was perfect. But what he showed me was that his perfection does not mean that we will not have sorrow and hurt and tribulations, and that things will not be done to hurt us. His perfection is that in the end, no matter what, he takes it all and uses it for good, for his glory. I knew that I was not truly leaving them. I knew that I was leaving them physically, but that I was going to experience every moment of their lives with them, almost more so in a way. I knew that I wasn't going to miss a thing, and I knew that I was going to see them again.
God said she could go back and be their mom or continue with him. Crystal chose to go with him. The first time in her life, she truly chose God above all else. They continued walking toward the entrance, God on her right, angels to her left. As they got closer, Crystal noticed a little girl, 3 or 4 years old, wearing a white frilly dress with little yellow flowers. The child was dipping a basket into the light and pouring it out like water, laughing with joy.
I remember instantly knowing, like, she's mine. You know, like, if you're going to stake claims to something, like that, she's mine. And I remember loving this child so much. And the whole time I'm just watching her play and smile. And something started to happen to my spirit. It was almost as if my spirit was being blown up like a balloon, but with love. And as I got close to her, I remember saying out loud, I'm going to explode, because I could not take one more bit of love for her. And I was okay with exploding into a million pieces because I couldn't take my eyes off of her.
Just before Crystal could scoop the child up, God changed the way she was viewing the little girl. Crystal looked down and recognized her immediately.
And I recognized her as me. And in an instant, everything, God explained everything. He said, I have tried to tell you this your entire life. I have tried to show you your entire life. It was one thing for God to say, I love you, but he allowed me to view myself through his eyes. And what he showed me in that moment was that he does not interfere with the free will that he has given humans. That he was with me when I called out, that every moment of my life, he never left. When I was in that dark room every Thursday night, he was there. I had felt alone my entire life, but to know that this God, who could have not even looked upon what was happening to me, not only looked upon it, but sat with me, so that when I went through this earthly pain at the hands of another human, that I did not do so alone.
God explained that he gave humans the gift of free will. If he interferes to help one person, he also interferes in another human's free will. Crystal was not hurt at the hands of an unloving God. She was hurt at the hands of a human acting through their own free will, going against God's will.
He freed me from a lifetime of shame. He healed me. He freed me from the inside out. Bad things can continue to happen in my life, but what they cannot do any longer is take away the belief and the knowledge that I know that God is a loving God, that he is a loving Father.
God healed Crystal's sense of identity and removed the shame that had defined her. He showed her that she belonged to him. Crystal says she later returned to her body, back to the hospital, where doctors had performed CPR or cardiopulmonary resuscitation to bring her back. 10 years later, life continues with its struggles, including her husband Virgil's suicide attempt 2 years ago. Yet Crystal holds on to what she learned.
He is love. I never understood that until I met him, until I stood there. I love because you first loved me. That his love funnels through us. With him, I touch the face of love. And it's just, I can't even imagine one person not getting to experience that. He is with us. Even when we feel that he's not, even when we feel completely alone, he's with us. And more than anything, he is in the midst of all of this, and that he loves us more than we could ever comprehend. But the biggest thing that I take away from him is that this is not it. This is just our beginning. Like, the best is yet to come.
For more relevant news from around our planet, please visit suprememastertv.com/news.